What's up, guys? We're here with a special Super Friends here. We're talking all about Batman v Superman and what we thought. In-depth spoilers. This is a 100% spoiler cast. So if you didn't see the movie, you could probably stay here because you saw the whole movie and trailer too. But
yeah,
but
you basically did actually. You know?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
But I want to introduce my guests here to talk about the movie here. So first up, we have Mckinnley.
What's up?
And we have CJ.
Yeah, indeed. I'm here to talk about this.
Yeah, and we can't wait to talk about the one of the biggest movies of the year, probably.
Definitely, like one of the biggest. Maybe not one of the best, but one of the biggest.
Well, it's a movie that's been hyped up
year.
for 3 years.
And that's the thing is, I think no matter what you thought about this movie, I think everybody can agree. I really, think that they did shoot themselves in the foot a little bit by hyping it up for 3 years. They just rammed that hype train. Like they ran it all the way up until release date, and I think that's why a lot of people were kind of disappointed.
They pulled the wool over our eyes.
They did. Us sheeple.
Even if you love the movie as much as I do, you can still say, man, it's not what you 100% would have liked. It's not what the hype was all about 100%.
Yeah. No, it's exactly like I was saying before we jumped on the cast. It's like, I don't really know how to best put this, so hang with me here. The movie that we got and the movie that I think most of us thought we were going to get are two entirely different things. And yeah, we're not kidding. You basically saw most of the movie in trailer 2, looking back on it, and having gone back and rewatched trailer 2 after seeing the movie. That's the best, that's the quote-unquote story trailer, but that is, almost all of the story and most of the twists and turns. But even with that, I still thought this movie was going to be different. There's a lot of shit in this movie that I was not expecting to be in there. And I think, a lot of us probably feel the same way, but...
Well,
I think even with all that stuff that was in it, I think it did slightly better of a job than like Amazing Spider-Man 2, for example, in how they implemented things.
Okay.
People can dislike it and don't like how there's so much in it and how they did it, but I still think it was still better than that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say earlier though, you were like, well, as much as I loved it, we can all agree that there are things that it didn't do right. Well, except for if you're certain people, like J-Roar.
Oh, come on. Let's not call anybody out by name.
Who think this is a masterpiece, but anyways.
I will say, if you're a DC fan, this is maybe not a masterpiece, but this is what you've waited a long time to see. And Nick, you're a DC fan, but you're also like a film buff, so I think you've got a little bit of a crisis of conscience going on right now. I think there's a lot to like if you were a DC fan. It's by no stretch of the imagination a perfect movie, which it is definitely not.
Yeah, it's not a 9.8 out of 10.
No, it is. I still think, and Mckinnley, I forget what your score was. My final score, and I stand by it, was I think the highest that I've given it was like a 7 out of 10. I'm hovering somewhere between a 6.5 and a 7. And that is with fanboy blinders full on. Because if I'm looking at how well this works as a movie, the score is a little bit lower than that.
Also, for anyone wondering, Josh, I believe, gave it a 6 out of 10.
Josh gave it a 6. The rest of... with the exception of Mckinnley, which is why Mckinnley is here.
No, actually, Will gave it a, what did he say, 8 point something? 8.7?
He said a 7.8.
7.8 or something like that.
He was in the IGN decimal system.
Wow, okay.
Which is, I thought that was high, but the...
So yeah, now that we're at this point though, first impressions, I guess, just brief first impressions of the movie overall. We'll start with Mckinnley.
I honestly absolutely love the film, having seen it twice. I stand by and will defend this movie till I'm blue in the face, even though people can have opinions. It's okay. We don't all have to think the same thing. But I honestly absolutely love the film. And I see many things, of course, that could have been changed for like some transitions and whatnot, like as a film, like you could see problems with. Maybe a couple scenes here and there that might not have been in it, but to me, I absolutely love the film.
Okay, CJ is up next.
So I'll bring this up now because I don't really know if it's going to fit in anywhere else in the conversation. I see a lot of people on Twitter talking about how people were standing up and applauding, cheering, crying during the times they saw it, laughing their asses off, screaming, hooting and hollering. Honestly, that was not my experience at all. I went into a packed theater, like 100% capacity theater, on Thursday night, one of the late night showings. And there were a lot of people in gear, like Superman and Batman gear. And literally, I can count on one hand how many times there were laughs, there were no cheers, there was no crying that I could hear. But there were literally like, and they weren't even really like, ha ha ha, this is so funny. There were like 3 like chuckles, like, haha, okay. And 2 of those times were Alfred, and the 3rd time was Ma Kent. But I think it's mainly because, a lot of people felt the same way I did walking out of the theater, which is just absolute overload. Sensory, information, emotion overload. There's so much coming at you. It's a 2.5 hour long film, and it is just... You'd think in a 2.5 hour long film there's some room to breathe, but there's not. And I put it this way to one of my friends who's a film buff who hasn't seen it yet. I was like, look... And it kind of levels out in the last hour or so, no matter what you feel about that final fight. It definitely does level out, and there's some longer scenes. In that first hour and a half, there might be 60 or 70 scenes. And when I told him that, his reaction was literally just, Jesus, what the fuck? And I was like, yeah, there are a lot of scenes that are literally just 10 or 15 seconds long. And I'm like, I liked this film. I didn't love it and we'll talk about, a lot of that has to do with the characters, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. There were a lot of things wrong with it from a cinema perspective, but, as a fan of the characters...
So it wasn't Kino to you?
It was not Kino to me. It was closer to popcorn flick.
Damn, that's a damn shame.
But even still... What's sad is, like, if it's a popcorn flick, how much did Zack Snyder and the cast and crew and writers... before the movie was released, talk about how this was like trying to elevate the genre and it wasn't going to be a popcorn flick and stuff like that. And I really, and now they're kind of backtracking on it and saying it's just a fun time at the movies. Turn your brain off.
Yeah, that guy from Warner Brothers said, it's just a fun time. It's everything you want.
It's just a fun time. And I was like, that's not what you were saying.
Yeah, and every interview that I recall from like the past month or so, like right at the last tail end of the press tour, everyone's been saying, "Oh yeah, Chris's script, like Chris Terrio, this guy named Chris Terrio, he wrote this great script. It's really smart, and it's got all this stuff in there." And I'm like, "Oh, cool! Like it's gonna be a step above Goyer." Like,
thank
okay,
God.
Great.
Yeah.
But then you see it and you're like, "Wow, is this Goyer?"
Maybe Goyer wasn't the problem.
Yeah, I kind of miss Goyer's, I have the Tinkle jokes and all that kind of stuff. I miss that.
But there's it's maybe the director's cut will fix it. Maybe. We'll see. I don't, unless that 30 minutes is just lengthening some of the scenes that we get and kind of giving some breathing room, which is not usually what happens with the director's cut. I find it hard that the director's cut is going to fix all of the issues. There might be some cool additional scenes in there, but the problem is just you've got way too much. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit more later. But
yeah.
So what are your thoughts, Nick?
Okay, yeah. So I'll give my thoughts like kind of briefly so we can get into the characters and stuff like that. But I don't know. For me, like everyone, it's no secret on the channel that I've been waiting for this movie for quite a long time.
which is why your reaction surprised me so much.
I was so jazzed up to see it early, and then I bought my ticket so I could see it Thursday night again, and all that. And then I see it the Monday screening. It's yeah, that was cool. I don't know how to feel about it because there was so much in there. Okay, it was pretty good though. Yeah. And then you think about it for like a 24-hour period, and you're like, wow, what did I just see? That wasn't really a Batman vs. Superman movie at all. That was like a quilt of scenes that were sewn together by a Warner Brothers committee. I don't know. I mean, just... I've seen it 3 times now, so I can kind of... The third time, I just tried to like say, okay, let me just look at this from an objective standpoint. and just a lot of the movie just doesn't work. It's just so strung together. It's just such a weird. It's a very odd cinematic experience watching it.
It really is. And there's a lot of things that I liked about the movie, but there is just. I think you described it pretty well. It's all of these things are just literally just kind of sewed together with thread, not very well. So it's like this patchwork quilt. I think might be the best way to. I tried to describe it when I was talking with you guys earlier as like trying to make a puzzle, but you're using like pieces from like a couple of different puzzles to try and make this one finished picture. And it'll be interesting to see. Like, to Zack Snyder's credit, he hasn't pulled a trank. He hasn't tranked his shit up and gone out and said, there was a great version of this movie that you'll never see thanks to the studio.
Oh, I thought you did say that. I saw something on 4chan.
That was the Photoshop version.
I thought he did tweet that out.
But it'll be really interesting to see if that's actually what happened and if the director's cut actually fixes a lot of the issues, or... Because we talked a little bit about before, the Terrio rewrote it, and that's why they delayed it. And the rewrites apparently were literally just fitting in all the Justice League stuff. Although I'd be surprised to see if Lex wasn't rewritten either, because he was the real weak point for me. I can't tell you, it's like a Pyrrhic victory for me. Because I made that, there's that video out there of me screaming about the Jesse Eisenberg casting. And I felt bad about that for a long time, to the point where I wanted to delete it but couldn't bring myself to. I was a little too prideful maybe, but I wanted to delete it. I decided I was going to give Eisenberg a chance. The more and more I heard about it, the more I liked. And then I watched the movie and I was like, I was right. And then I've got comments on the video the next day saying, God damn it, you were right. But
I think, to Zack Snyder's credit, I think that the ultimate cut, or whatever they're going to call it, I think it will be better only because Zack Snyder typically designs his movies to be 3 hours plus. Like we've seen with Watchmen, had the director's cut is like 1,000,000 times better than the actual cut.
Yep.
And I think that obviously the studio doesn't want to release a 3-hour movie in theaters because there's going to be far less
R-rated.
money. And, or R-rated too. And it's just... I think that he had to compromise with them and cut it down, because really the movie is like 2 hours and 23 minutes with credits. So I think they had to compromise, and that's why there's so many scenes that get choppily edited in the movie. I think the extended cut will probably be better. But
yeah, hopefully it'll fix a lot of
One thing how I've been describing it to people, or like what I've noticed too, is like you are saying, there's a lot of stuff to take in. And with all the information that is shown, with everything being so small, but it's still a lot of information, it comes off very subtle. And that's why people don't seem to quite be able to piece it up together, because there's just so much stuff going on that they get lost within it. So going from one scene to one scene and seeing how it connects just really, like you said, it's like a puzzle piece. It really jambles and confuses people because they don't know where this information is even coming from. And then when people say something that they thought that they saw, it doesn't make sense to them. They're like, wait, I don't remember seeing that at all.
Here's my thing. That there's what you're saying to a certain degree is true. There's a lot of things that are left for the audience to interpret, I guess. There's a lot of things that are done very subtly. In good films, subtlety is used differently. In good films, subtlety is not... Subtlety is essentially like a replacement for exposition. It's like where you would have somebody just explain the plot. It's different. It's a knowing look, how a character says something, what a character says, rather than, that he just spells it out for you. And there's, some of that in this movie. There's some exposition in this movie, too.
Like in Winter Soldier, when Zola explains the plan in the bunker.
Exactly. But I don't feel like...
That's why people like say it's like what was it? What's the quote that people say? Some substance over
style over substance.
Yeah, style over substance. That's why it's very subtle storytelling, and that's the weak point.
Well, I think I think the issue is not necessarily that there was a lot left for the viewers to interpret purposefully. The vibe that I get from this movie is that there was just a lot thrown in there, and there was a lot that they didn't even have time to address heavy-handedly. and that's because there were some things done in this movie that were very, very heavy-handed. Lex, for example, is just... if we're going to talk about something that didn't work, and we were talking about the characters, I guess it was a big idea of the spoiler cast, but...
Oh yeah, we should probably jump into that, actually.
Lex did not work for me. There are flashes of the comic book Lex where he's incredibly intelligent, and he's, the smartest man in the room, and he's a manipulator above all else. But all of that is bogged down by... His motivations, I'm fine with. They're unclear, and that's probably the only part where I agree with you, McKinnley, about like the subtlety. Is there's subtlety in his motivations that I think is there beyond the surface level. If you look into it, it's there. Mm-hmm. But it is just mired and bogged down by this incessantly annoying way that either they wrote it or Eisenberg decided to play it, because it is just awful. It takes me out of the movie every time he opens his mouth. The only time that I was like okay with that was the only time I was okay with the character, I should say, was when he kidnapped Ma Kent. That as the impetus for Superman going to fight Batman worked for me. But then Superman just tries to tell him about it like once or twice and then gives up and is like, fine, I guess I'll just kill you. And then he gets his ass kicked. But Lex, for the most part, we talked a little bit about in the chat. Maybe you retcon Superman after this movie, but god damn it, Superman doesn't necessarily need to be retconned, and we'll talk about that when we get to Superman. Lex needs to be retconned. But
I think that deleted scene that they released kind of shows that, because at the end of the movie, there are people speculating that he was given the anti-life equation or something. That he's been warped or something. That's why he's all weird at the end of the movie in that prison scene.
Well, the issue is he's weird the entire movie. If that was, and Nick, the way you're describing it is how I would have loved for them to play it. Make him crazy, but make him crazy only after he's been exposed to an entire civilization's worth of knowledge. Like, that's the kind of shit that'll drive a man crazy. He's beyond eccentric. They were describing him as eccentric. He's eccentric as Tony Stark giving the Apogee Award to a fake legionnaire at Caesar's Palace. Eccentric is not like rambling on, about shit at every time they give you a chance to speak. But that's just my 2 cents. What did you guys think of Lex? Or not Lex, excuse me. He was not the Lex in front of the Corp. That was Alexander Sr., who I assume was much better at being Lex than Eisenberg was.
My 2 cents for the characters on, like, Batman, he was very, like Nick likes to say, he's definitely Miller Batman. But in comparing Batman to the other characters in the movie, we never see his progression, well, obviously because it's his first appearance, but he already has all of his history. And whereas Lex, even though I enjoyed his character, he does come off as a crazy scientist, and it's not quite the Lex most people want. And maybe he'll progress later on, maybe he won't, but it's not the Lex people want. And as for Superman, if people say he doesn't progress, I think he does. But it's the way they brought it up and showed it to the audience. They're very boggled down on how trying to word it right.
Well, I think if I can understand what you're getting at, it sounds like they just didn't have time to fit in.
What's a mix of that and like the versions that they use? Most people don't either A, they don't know, B, they don't like, or C, don't care for.
Well, I think another primary issue here is the only version of Lex that we've ever seen on screen on the big screen, I should say, is the Richard Donner and later Bryan Singer version, which is like a real estate mogul who's just out to get rich, which is still a better version of Lex than this one, not necessarily comic accurate, but this one, I really don't have, the wealth of comic knowledge to tell you where this draws from the comics, only to say that this does not draw from any comic that I have read.
Read Superman Birthright. Dude. Read Birthright.
Okay, but
he's like All-Star Lex, dude.
It's a mess to me. It totally does not really fit with this movie, I don't think. But I'll tell you who was a good tone fit for this movie was Ben Affleck's Batman. A transition that would have made Will from Marvelite proud. Marvelite, excuse me.
Wait, McKinley, did you want to just finish your thoughts on the characters in general, and then we can go to CJ's thoughts? And
I guess to quickly generalize, my impression of the characters, I thought they were all well written. For me, I personally enjoyed them. They were, like CJ said, they weren't expanded on due to all the stuff that was really driven into that movie. If proper screen time and proper development were in it, I think they would be more well received. And also, Wonder Woman was great, in my opinion.
All right, CJ, I guess you can go into your extended thoughts on like the whole characters.
Yes, here we go. So. All right, we'll start where he finished. Wonder Woman surprised me because there's a video where we talk about way back when like Gal Gadot getting casted for this role. And I was kind of like, okay, we'll see. She has the look, but, she hasn't really acted in a lot of things. She blew me away. She was really good. And I'm really excited for Wonder Woman now, even more when you see, like, all the kind of the rest of the high-ranking Amazonians. I'm really excited to explore more into that universe. I feel like she was done very well, and her character was done. Her character was handled the most organically in the movie, I thought. Turkish Airlines plugs aside, she was really, really good in the way she showed up. And I kind of like the comic book resources review actually pretty accurately says what I felt about that. Whereas everybody else is like dour and frowning the entire movie, she shows up and she's kicking ass with a smile on her face. And I was like, there you go. That's what I want. And, she steps into the movie and kind of livens it up, in my opinion. Ben Affleck's Batman was incredible, in my opinion, the best on-screen Batman we've gotten so far, and he really also pulls off the Bruce aspect of it. Like I was telling you guys, I was the only one in my theater that laughed at the Pretty Woman Bad Habit joke.
There was only a brief appearance of like the Playboy Bruce too.
Exactly, but I was like, there you go. You don't need to show too much off because that's something that most of the audience knows after 7 Batman movies.
Yeah.
So and that's and he was he owned both sides of that role. Jeremy Irons' Alfred is not, there have been bad Batmans, there have been bad Supermans, there have not been many bad Alfreds. I think there have been more good Alfreds than bad. I really like Jeremy Irons, and I hesitate to say he's the best because Michael Caine was so good. Mike O'Kane, but we'll see if he beats Mike O'Kane when we get to the solo Batman movie. The other big one for me is Superman, and I did not like Superman for most of this movie because I felt like it was a continuation of the Man of Steel thing. I can it was a part of the movie that I didn't really think needed to 100% be in there, but I'll save that for my final thoughts. I'm okay with him still questioning his place in the world after Man of Steel, which, kind of felt a little bit redundant after Man of Steel, but the first part of his arc was so jumbled. The only thing I'll say about it is when they did Death of Superman in the very, very end, and this is a spoiler cast, so nobody should be shocked by this.
What? It's Death of Superman.
When they did Death of Superman, in that, even though the sequence that preceded it was the most mind-numbing thing that I've seen outside of Gotham, where Lois throws the spear into the pool, almost drowns getting it, Superman saves her, then almost drowns getting the spear, and Lois saves him. That was literally Yakety Sax should have been playing in the background. When he looks at Lois and kind of tells her, it's like, I've got to do this. Henry Cavill, by the way, did a great job of very subtly, portraying his emotions and emoting very well on screen with some poor dialogue given to him, whoever was writing most of Superman's lines, I feel like does not get Superman at all. But
oh, that's Chris Terrio,
thanks Terrio,
Oscar winner.
But the when he looks at Lois and says, more or less, you can tell by his look, no matter what he says on screen, he's like, I've got to do this, and I've got to do this. And she knows, but, she can't. She knows she can't stop him. And that is what he does there, plunging that spear into Doomsday and paying the ultimate price for it, is literally the first time in the DCEU I feel like we've seen comic book Superman. And that, I walked out of the theater a little bit more positive because of that. I was like, that is they're set up in the right direction.
Yeah, that's why they're going to soft reboot him when he comes back.
Mullet
he's going to be
confirmed.
literally a different person.
He's going to have the black and silver and the mullet.
To like the final thoughts, I just want to give my thoughts on what I thought of him.
Hey, you already got your thoughts.
Oh,
Just
one thing. I feel that like Man of Steel, it was more of a Superman. It was Clark Kent becoming Superman. And then this movie was about him learning how to be Superman. Okay. And then he figured it out at the end.
Again?
Well, learning how to be him, not just becoming him.
Okay. So my turn now?
Yes, you can go. You can go now.
Alright. So, Wonder Woman was good, but she did not need to be in this movie. Batman, perfect. Best Batman I've ever seen in my life on a big screen movie.
Absolutely.
It was everything I've wanted to see, and I hope that they rush that Batman movie out right now because, I just want to see that again. Like, that warehouse scene was, like, the best part of the movie.
Yep.
Also, shout out to Zach for doing that I Believe You scene where he shoots the guy with the M60. That was awesome. Superman, he a little too mopey again in this movie for me. But like you said, that scene where he like sacrificed himself, that was the best part. I agree. That was Henry Cavill's best moment right there.
Which is sad because it took him dying.
Yeah, that was the best. But that right there was the best acting. And the part where he says, what does he say? It's when he's talking with Lois at the apartment when he says, it meant something on my world. I almost laughed when he said that because his delivery was so awful.
He kind of just said it offhand. She was like, or I can't remember what she said to prompt it, but he was like, it meant something on my world.
She says this means something when he's having a crisis of conscience again.
This means something. It meant something on my
place.
world. That was literally, I remember sitting there in the theater too thinking, what the fuck? Who wrote this? Oscar winner Chris Terrio.
Yeah, but I mean... I really hope they... Oh, also, I really hope they soft reboot Superman when he comes back, but also, I thought it was really cool that they did the zombified Superman from Dark Knight Returns too, and the nuke. That was awesome to see.
That was not what I expected, and it was really cool that they did that. Me and Josh were both like, that was tight.
Yeah, that was awesome.
The Husk Superman, but the...
But, yeah, for me, also, Lex... He was a bit over the top most of the time, but like I don't know, he was kind of good though. He brought some levity to the movie.
Yeah, I that's a good point. I was so angry at the performance. I haven't really thought about how much more dark the movie would have been if he wasn't there serving up Granny's peach tea. Yeah.
I also really loved Alfred too. He wasn't in the movie that much, but every time we saw him, he was really good, and he had like this really good back and forth with Bruce. And I also liked the fact that towards the beginning of the movie, when he talks about new rules with Batman, or Bruce, whatever, in the Batcave, he says, Bruce says, "Of course we're criminals. We've always been criminals, Alfred." And that's straight out of the Dark Knight too. I love that. Yep. Like all this stuff is straight out of the comic book. I loved it.
It was actually, I will say, there were a lot of moments where you could tell, like Zack Snyder really, and that's why what I said on Twitter and what I've said in that controversy video, I still stand by. At the end of the day, I think more than anything, this is still a movie. How am I going to phrase this?
But it's got all these cool comic book stuff in there. But then there's another 2.5-hour movies.
Yes,
that's like
at the end of the movie, at the end of the day, at the very least, this is a comic book movie. It's a movie for the fans, and it's not the best movie in the world, and it will not make every fan happy. But there's a lot in there that I think a lot of comic book fans will love. Now, granted, if you take your fanboy blinders off, it's definitely less than a 7 out of 10. And I'm saying that to myself more than anything. But with the fanboy blinders on, it is a movie that I liked, not a movie that I loved. And it is not a bad. It's not greater than the sum of its parts, but some of the parts are pretty good.
Oh, also, I saw a really emotional review. I don't know if you guys have seen this one, but like this guy is kind of sitting in front of a camera talking about like how he loved the movie. I think his name is Brett Culp or something like that.
Yeah,
it came out recently. It's kind of going viral now. But he brought up a really good point about the "I'm a friend of your son's" line. He got like super emotional. Like he actually cried in his review when he said that. But he kind of broke it down so well. Like in all the Batman movies, whenever like someone's like, "Who are you?" he always says, "I'm Batman." But in this movie, he says, "I'm a friend of your son's." Like that's actually like a really emotional line when you think about it, because it's like he's not just like Batman, like he's just I don't know, it's like this really like this really meta line when you think about it or something.
I agree. No, it really is, because it definitely points that, you know, thankfully after our long national nightmare of many years of movies being disconnected, we're finally going to see like an actual living, breathing universe on screen, where these characters can interact and aren't stuck with embargoes and bogged down by, you know, petty references to Robin that don't make any sense when you think about them. Like, but I'm still excited for the future of the DCEU. I think the future is still bright. It is better than this movie, and from a fan perspective, this movie is better than, you know, what some of the critics are making it out to be. Is it still flawed? Yes, of course. And everything the critics are saying is absolutely true. It's not like they're lying. The movie is still a mess, but it is at times an enjoyable mess.
Oh, also, side note, I completely forgot that Batman is going to be in Suicide Squad, so we'll see him again in 4 months.
We'll see him in August.
So yeah, that's awesome. I guess we can wrap up with our final thoughts here. We'll go with Mckinnley first.
Okay. My final thoughts are, as much as I love the movie, and I still stand by with my 9 out of 10 based on my entertainment and how much I love the film. I hope that all this setup in the end is worth it, because a lot of people are so mixed and they might not want to come back. So I hope all this setup is in the end worth it, and maybe in the next films it makes this film look better because of the setup.
Yeah. So you're on 9 out of 10, right? That's your final score?
That is my final score.
All right. CJ, your thoughts and score?
I'm going to try to balance out my like I said, going to keep fighting my perpetual war of balancing the fanboy blinders with, you know, what little I know about quality movies. And I think the 7 out of 10 is a rating that I've stuck on. It's higher than most, lower than some, but my final thoughts are just, you know, a message to, you know, anybody out there that's worried about the future of the DCEU right now. It's not over. It's not going to be over just because of this movie. This movie has already made, you know, almost $500 million, which in like, you know, 4 or 5 days is pretty fucking crazy. Granted, a lot of that is because it's being released simultaneously in a lot of places. That usually does not happen, but still, $500 million. It's already made back the most, you know, upper limit, you know, kind of expectations of its budget. It's on the way to making, you know, I think it's going to hit that $800 million mark, where it's going to be considered at the very least a financial success, if not a critical one. So the DCEU will continue, you know, because the money was good enough. What'll be interesting to see is what happens with Zack Snyder. And I think it's a little too late. You know, you could delay it, but that would be admitting defeat, and you don't admit defeat when you've made $800 million.
Mm-hmm.
So Zack will probably be back for Justice League 1, and then that movie is going to decide what they do with Justice League 2 more than anything. But we'll see.
So 7 out of 10, is that?
7 out of 10.
All right. So my thoughts, I don't know if I can put a number score, because it might be too controversial, but I will say that it's gonna be, to me, I think that as much as I like Zack Snyder, I think he's a good guy. I really think that he's making these movies from a place of being a comic book fan. He's admitted in interviews recently that he said that he's made this from the point of view as a fan. He wants to make it 100% that comic book aesthetic. He can't do it any other way. without like not feeling 100% about it. But I think that, you know, it's just tough for Warner Brothers to keep putting out these movies that are so divisive. They can't get a hit like say Marvel. I don't want to compare them, but it's hard not to. Marvel consistently puts out movies that are loved by critics and fans almost universally, and they make like good money. And with these DC movies, they're constantly being critical. They're just really divisive, split down the middle. They make some money here and there. I mean, like, well, $500 million, but still, I mean, it's just like they really need to get this ball rolling of like consistently well-received movies, and so far the universe is being built on shaky grounds. I think it's just kind of
the foundation
kind of worrying.
Is built on sand.
Yeah, it's a little worrying, but I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think, you know, they're going to need a hit at some point, and hopefully, like, and I will say, I can't remember, it was Dan Slott, I think, who said, you know, he's like, I'll say something nice about Batman v Superman, and it was kind of snarky from a fan's perspective, probably, but what he said was absolutely true. That Suicide Squad trailer did look damn good on the big screen, and you know, hopefully that'll be the hit that they need. But
I think it will, because Suicide Squad, I've heard it always from a bunch of people that it's much more fun than the trailers are leading it on to be.
Yep.
So,
and that second trailer kind of hinted at that, and you know, I think it showed off a lot of that fun side. But
definitely get animated series vibes from it.
Yeah, which is fun. I think, you know.
Yeah,
Captain Boomerang immediately became my favorite. Remember when he cracked open that tall boy in the middle of the fight? I was like, "That's my guy." There you go. But
going back to Batman v Superman, though, I guess I'll just give my score, then we can wrap things up. But as it stands right now, the theatrical release, I don't know. I'm sitting at like a between. My rating has gone up a little bit just because I don't want to be like, okay, this is a Green Lantern Fantastic level of terribleness. I mean, it's just, I kind of feel bad for saying that, but to me, it's like between a 4 and a 5, the theatrical release. But like I said, I do believe that the extended cut will be better. So that's my final thoughts.
Yeah. CJ places between the two DC fans.
Yeah,
smack in the middle, literally.
Yeah, so I don't know. Any final thoughts on this?
I honestly would still recommend that people see it. Don't let a critic shape your opinion of the movie, though the critics make valid points. Nick, you told me after you thought about it for a couple of days, because you saw it on Monday. I was going to see it on Thursday. You messaged me Thursday with something that honestly helped my viewing experience. You said, go in with lowered expectations. And I did. I really did. Me and Josh were sitting there. You know, we were at a nice theater. I was able to get a beer. I was sitting there. I told him, I was like, I'm not expecting much at all. And we went in, and I enjoyed it more than my expectations. So maybe lower your expectations a little bit from what the critics are saying, but don't let a critic stop you from seeing the movie. And as I said, at the end of the day, if you enjoyed it, you enjoyed it, and nothing that anybody says can really take that away from you.
I also said to forget the 3 years of hype before saying it too.
Exactly.
Just forget all of that. Just pretend you're seeing this movie right now. Just forget everything about it. Just go in and watch the movie.
Definitely.
And you'll come out angry. No.
With rage.
From what I've seen, it's either you love it, you hate it, you're mixed. It's like an average film, but whatever you feel, don't be afraid to express it.
That's how it starts. The fever. The rage.
Except if you're a certain person that gives it a 9 out of 10, that calls it a modern masterpiece.
It is. And so here's the thing. I think in time, like, you know, there's a chance. It seems weird to like think about the future at now. There's a chance this movie will look a lot better in hindsight.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We'll see. I can't say, but whether
it's not confirmed.
Just saying it might look good in the future can't change my score right now. You know, whether we look back on it, you know, in 20 years and view it as in the same way we view The Thing, or the same way we view Apocalypse Now, or, you know, the whole spectrum of movies in between those two movies. That'll be great in 20 years, but it can't change anything right now.
Didn't we say that about Man of Steel?
We did.
What happened there?
It led to another sequel that was just as divisive.
Very.
All right, I'm ready to get out of here.
I'm done talking about this.
Thank you again.
Fever, this rage has driven this good man cruel.
So thanks again, everyone, for listening. Comment below what you guys thought about the movie. And again, this is a spoiler cast, so you can post full spoilers in the comments. We warned you a couple times throughout this video. So yeah. Also check back. There's going to be another Super Friends episode going up this week. We're going to talk all things DC Rebirth on a lighter note, and
DC Power Hour.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of cool stuff there. So yeah, thanks again, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Peace.